Yeah. And listen, I mean, I wasn't coming from Ramona. Like when Ramona was scurrying, like Ebony was talking about our current vice president and Ramona was scurrying. She like could not get out of it. She didn't know where to look. She couldn't get out of it. I'm like, this is the exact same thing as Bethenny being under the cabinet when Carole is talking
Yeah,
about,
I
like,
didn't
it's
know that.
literally,
Yeah, but
it's like,
Bethany could get away with it for some reason in the way Ramona didn't. But the both of them are the workhorses of the show. And it's funny because I didn't know Bethany was crawling in the cabinet. I just thought she was bending down to get something out of the cabinet. And only when I saw the show, I was like, Jesus, she's like trying to make me look crazy. Like, I'm not crazy. Everyone in the country is talking about this. I was going to talk about it. But anyway, here's what he said, would you mind looking at this epitaph quote? Now, I don't know if it's is this is this going to be on my tombstone? And he says, this is what I say. The editing is the lie. The camera is the truth. But the reality is every fight you see on the show, from the silly bickering over not being invited to a party to the table flips, wine tosses, and leg throws, are always about the show itself. When you are filming, if someone barely offended you, you had to rise to the level of being mortally wounded. But what you were really upset about was how the audience was going to view it and whether that drama was going to make them a star or make you look like a whatever, fill in the blank, sexist, racist, delusional person. And it really was like all the fights I thought were about whatever petty thing was going on. And listen, the pettier the better. The petty fights are the funniest, and that's what the audience loves. That's the guilty pleasure of the show, the pettiness. But when it became, when the fights would escalate to beyond the petty, to really like nastiness, it was like there was always a piece of you. And I felt for it too during the Aviva Drescher ghostwriter thing. Like I could have just, rolled off my shoulder and was like, I don't care. You sound crazy, and pipe down, honey. You don't, but I felt wounded by that. And I like escalated it, not for the show, but then in effect, it has the way of you're thinking about like, oh my God, what's the audience going to think? You always have that in the back of your mind.
But if this happened in season 5, say with Aviva, like after you learned how the machine works, would you have had the same reaction? Maybe you would have. I don't want to lead you. Or maybe you just would have been like, okay.
I don't know. I think that was, again, that fight I had with was an anomaly for me in those first 3 or 4 seasons, right? Like I was letting everything roll. There was a lot of slights. I mean, Luann was constantly saying shit about me, and I was like, let it roll. But so that was like a little bit of, but again, I think it was because the couple of things, and we'll go back to the beginning, that I felt protective over, other than my late husband and his family, was my work, because I knew going into the show that it was so different. And I was coming from such a different experience than the other women. And I think I probably let that get the better of me in that situation. But a lot of this, most of the fights are really about the show itself.
That makes sense. Well, speaking of the work, because you say Ebony would be great on another show, like Ebony is hired to co-host The View. I don't know for how long, like as a guest co-host.
Really? Oh, that's fantastic.
I don't know if it's like 2 or I don't know how it's working, but is this true? Because I read this somewhere, I don't know if you said it, where you, after Housewives, wanted to be on The View, and then they didn't want you because of Housewives. I don't know if that's you or somebody else said that.
First of all, I'll tell you, see, this is what I mean about, like, this is one thing about being on reality TV and having these millions of eyeballs, that people actually think they really know you. And that's like,
this is why I don't want a gossip podcast. I'm going to ask the source directly. She's sitting right here.
Yeah. Okay. I will tell you, the real story is boring. What you just said is kind of like, ooh, there's a drama. She wants this and she can't get it. Maybe she's too liberal. She's too, and they're looking for a conservative voice. No. I worked at ABC for nearly 15 years. So I have a lot of friends, colleagues at ABC. One of them happened to be the executive in charge of The View, right? She was in charge of The View. She was a talent. She was in charge of hiring all the talent, not only for The View, but for across ABC platform. And I had left the show. And the one thing about being on the show for 6 years is you lose contact with your real friends, because you're in a universe of, even though you only film for 4 or 5 months, it's a full-time job pretty much the whole year, because you're just always in this cycle of like watching the show and who's saying that and who's saying this and why did she say, and then doing press, and you're just in it. So you kind of lose touch with a lot of your other friends, or at least I did for some period of time. So I had lunch with my friend, and it got into page 6, I think, that I was seen having lunch with this woman who was, by the way, was a bridesmaid at my wedding. We're very close.
Right.
And we didn't talk about The View. I would never do The View. In fact, not to say anything about The View, and I was on The View a couple of times. The last thing I wanted to do when I left the Housewives is to go on another show where there was 4 or 5 women all screaming at each other. Like it was, and I would never have, they didn't ask me to do it. I never asked, I never wanted it. But someone saw me having lunch. And that's the story. I don't know where it came from. I think they called ABC for a confirmation and they denied it. But I think it's like, oh yeah, wink, wink, they're denying it. It absolutely was not true. This was my lifelong friend, my bridesmaid at my wedding. And we were just having lunch. And she also happened to be casting for all the shows, The View, Good Morning America, Nightline, all the shows. It's her job.
So see how things get. I mean, this is just one of those things. I'm like, here she is. Ebony's off to The View. That's one of those things I read. I'm like,
I think that's great. I think it's she's very dynamic, very thoughtful, obviously very well educated, and also living, like in that world of like where she has so much experience to talk about, and the Black experience, not only of women, but just the Black community in general. Like they need her on that show. It's a perfect show for her. Maybe she'd rather do the Housewives. I don't know. Like the Housewives is a more powerful brand and you reach more people, but the other side of it is like, she really, I'm sure, has to diminish herself a little bit.
And it's
what I know about her, like, which is not much other than what I read and what I saw in those episodes.
And like The View is a job that could go on forever, technically. I mean,
yeah,
years and years.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know her. And I wish her, good luck and whatever she wants to do. But I think that makes sense to me. Like watching her on Housewives, like debating with Luann was like excruciating, because I'm like, you don't know, like there's just no getting through, or like talking to Ramona about critical race theory. I mean,
Ramona does not want to go there, which is funny. That's what makes like Ramona. I mean, do you think
also Ramona, again, she knows the show. She's been on it 13 years. She knows the audience, and she knows that the audience isn't gonna. I think if she thought the audience was going to be really into this debate, and I think she probably, again, I don't know, and I haven't talked to her about it, nor will I, but I think she probably on some level thought, oh my fucking God, like this is not going to play well. Not only she's going to look bad, but just, as a show, the audience is not going to be interested in this. Like, what are we talking about? Let's talk about, how her hairstyles or dinner invitations, or like how, like, her parquet floors in her apartment look cheap.